what I needed in the 20s and 30s was different to what I need now. When do I make that cut? Do you overlap or do you take the plunge?
Welcome everyone. Those are the words of Christina Hiltscher, my guest in today's episode of the Wow of the World of Work podcast, which by the way is also a video cast. So we talk about career pivoting and what does it take to make that leap? What do you need to consider before you take that decision? Christina is a marketing and sales senior professional within the pharma industry, and she's also passionate about art to the point that she's considering to turn that passion into a profession. Easier said than done. Here are some of her reflections and her personal story in that journey. Welcome, Christina. I'll say a couple of words about you.
Sure.
As an intro, looking into my cheat sheet here. So, Christina, you've worked in two large healthcare companies, J&J and Medtronic, right?
Yeah.
And in various divisions, but mostly within marketing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So with increased responsibility, your last role was marketing head for Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Yeah.
For a therapy group generating $500 million a year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your functional expertise are in sales, market development, marketing and business in medtech, specifically cardiology, therapy, and diagnostics. Your background is in management, strategic planning, and international marketing. You have an MBA from EADA, business school in Barcelona.
Yes, beautiful place.
It is, isn't it? I just love Barcelona. To all our Spanish Barcelona friends, hola. And you are now the founder and director of Hiltscher Consulting, and you have exchanged the healthcare space for art, where your passion actually lies. On top of that, you lived in many different countries, 6 or 7, you say, depending on how we count it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I didn't necessarily pack my bags and move over to Nepal, but I stayed there in a very local environment and did some great collaborations with some NGOs and worked with kids. Great experience. But so, yeah, if you count these things, then I would say probably 7. If not 6.
And Nepal must have been a dramatically different reality.
Yes, I mean it was an incredible experience. Beautiful people, but it really challenges your views and also how do we work in comparison to Nepal, for example. I mean, there's very different attitudes, lifestyles, of course, and it does make you question not so much what is right or wrong, because what works for us here doesn't work there and vice versa. But I think you take a closer look at how we are, and we can certainly learn from other cultures. That's for sure.
It must be, I think, also a very humbling experience, I would imagine. And by the way, Nepal's on my list as soon as we can travel again at some stage.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Exactly. So 6 or 7, let's say 7 countries, because it sounds like you are pretty passionate about that country.
Yeah,
you've gone
definitely.
there a couple of times, and you've pivoted career.
Yeah.
Right. Or you are now pivoting career. Let's talk a little bit more about a couple of your other traits, personal traits, before handing it over to you. You are best known for your positive attitude.
Yeah. I think you can say that. I haven't had any complaints. So mostly when I was managing teams or working on projects with people, they enjoyed the working environment, and it's important to have fun while you're working hard and giving your best. But we can't forget the other side, right?
Which is?
The human element, right?
Yeah.
Working with people, enjoying the collaboration and also, not taking things too seriously at times. There's time for everything.
Exactly. A little bit of playfulness helps a lot.
Absolutely.
I would say, and I think Lego has they really nailed it down when they say serious play, and they also have these they use Lego often to also facilitate certain team sessions, right? Because it just helps when you get into that playful mode. We kind of operate differently. Yeah. And as well, I'm going to share your worst nightmare.
Okay.
For now.
Go for it.
Besides spiders.
Yeah, we don't talk about those.
We can talk about it if you want. I can put a nice picture of a spider.
Oh, no.
But it's about being dependent. So you've been raised to be independent. So I'd like to start that conversation actually from here, because it sounds like an important value for you, this independence. It
is, and I thought about it for a long time when you asked that question, because it's not an easy question, and it's also it's very personal. I mean, on one side, like we talk about, we have our irrational fears, whether it being an animal or flying or whatever this may be. But this is really about me and also my personality to a degree. Mm-hmm. So I've always worked in order to, live my life, make my own decisions, but also in a way financial independence. And I mean, this is a tough one, because it has helped me massively to, take decisions, do my own thing, move countries, and, live my life the way I have independently. And that's great. At the same time, when you're then trying to pivot your career or your profession, that topic of dependency becomes almost a little bit of an obstacle. I had to have some serious talks with myself, because if you start to set up your own business, you can't necessarily do it all on your own, right? You will also have to look at your finances and say, when do I make that cut? Do you overlap, or do you take the plunge? And you've got to expect that at the beginning, it's setup time, right? It's establishing, it's not about, the goal is not to break even after 3 months. So that had certainly something to do with it. And you have a network, you need to talk to people, and you need to make plans. And that was certainly a little bit challenging for me, because I have almost like, I'm mixing things a little bit here as well, where dependency on others or getting help is not necessarily a bad thing. So I think I got to look a little bit more about the notion of what the word independent actually means. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess it's also, I think one thing is as well dependency. Another thing is a sense of support. Correct. Right, because it sounds like to me, and actually what you're talking about is what many, many people face as one of the key questions when they pivot, careers, and when they want to pursue a different path, which is perhaps more linked to, or trying something different, which may or may not be linked to their passions. Usually it is, but it is usually linked to a sense of curiosity, a sense of challenging oneself, getting out of the comfort zone, etc. Yeah. But often people hesitate. True. Also because of that, because of this sense of, okay, so what am I leaving behind? And what is it that I'm going to need to make sure I still have, so that I am not only successful, but I'm also comfortable in this new zone that I'm in. And so the financial component is nonetheless quite important. And I always say that, by the way, to people as well. Make sure your needs, your obligations are first and foremost taken care of before taking a lead. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I think this whole dependency, you can also look at it in a sense of when you are in a corporate job. I mean, you got teams, managers, employees. You have a very strong support network. I'm not sure dependency is the right thing, but there is an interdependency of the work that is done, and how, the company has strategies, goals, objectives, and everything interlinks. And then when you step out of that, you don't have that anymore. It's now independent, but also without that. Well, nobody tells you where the strategy is or the objectives are. You need to do that. And you don't necessarily start off with a team and colleagues. You're on your own. So does independence in that sense then also mean alone? So I think that it's we could probably spend a long time talking about that, but but it's a challenging one, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit your story, therefore, and the audience as well, and the listeners. That I'm sure, as we talk about embracing these multiple professions and starting to consider that not only as a nice to have, but perhaps in the future an important component to start considering. Tell us your story. How did you pivot, from in your world of work, what it looks like now compared to some time ago?
I think it's a complex question, because it was certainly not an easy decision. And therefore probably also not the most straightforward answer, because I also very much enjoyed what I was doing, right? I enjoy working with the team, and I have a very deep sense of accountability and responsibility. I had a nice career progression, and so many things that come with the job. You're able to move countries, you manage a team, you get exposure to so many different people and cultures. So it's been very rewarding, and I learned a lot. But I think for me, I got to a point that I'd been in the same company for 10 years. Yes, in different roles. Yes, in different divisions. So there was always variety and learning something new. But it got to a point where I looked at my entire career, and I think also the profile of the companies I worked for were very similar. Very good companies, great products, very ethical. But I felt like, I'm at a point now that if I want another experience, when is that point of, okay, now I've been in a company 20 years, for example, am I then still going to make that change or not? And I decided that I needed to do something else. I was looking for a different corporate experience, a different corporate culture, a different surroundings, right? So something where I felt like somehow I needed a new spark. And that necessarily didn't mean that whatever I had was bad. Absolutely not. But I felt like, let's talk about the why a little bit. I felt like I had lost a little bit my why. And this is all about who we are, our reason for being, what motivates and drives us. And I actually don't think I necessarily realized that. I'm very, my head kept, keep going, keep working, do this, and it's all great, your career's moving. But I stopped listening a little bit to what my gut was trying to tell me. And I felt that at one point I realized, I'm actually not in alignment with my values anymore. And I think that is something we need to check in every so often, because we change, companies change, and that needs to happen, right? We evolve. And at that point, it just wasn't the right fit anymore. So I took the decision and said, no, I need to do something new. And I've actually received extremely great support to make that leap. First I needed a bit of time out, check back in again and do that work, because we all have goals and we write goals when we're in jobs and we work for these things, but and
the New Year's resolutions is always a good opportunity for new goals.
Absolutely right. But do we really sit down and look at, okay, what are my needs or values and how have they changed? Because what I needed in the 20s and 30s was different to what I need now. And I think that's just normal development.
And, and sorry to kind of interrupt your flow of thought here, but I realize as well when I put my coaching hat on that, or even my HR hat on, quite frankly, that we have a tendency to see our careers as a line, if you will, right? From start to finish, even if in the meantime you may have different employments, but it is like start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. But actually, the thing is, within that timeline, we do change as well. And so what was true for you, or what was important for you, excuse me, because perhaps the truth hopefully still stays the same in terms of values. But what's important for people changes. And so it's a little bit to help people relax when it comes to their careers and their next steps and their world of work, to say, if you stretch that timeline and you say 40 years or maybe even more, because in the future we're going to be hopefully very productive with our brains even after retirement, then you're going to realize, I can play in this landscape very differently. There's no longer a need to kind of stay stuck, but I say, maybe I'm going to stay 5 years there, but then I'm going to pivot and do something else, which is something our generation is not necessarily used to thinking. But I do believe that that's one of the things that would help when people start looking in their world of work.
Yeah, and I think that opens a whole other topic in terms of when you look at recruiting or wanting to change industries or jobs or whatever it may be, how that can be actually facilitated, because it's not so easy. And I would actually say that there are certain concepts they're talked about a lot, like transferable skills. But I'm sorry to say, reality is it is a fancy buzzword, because what gets hired for is plug and play. So, and when we are saying that what maybe needs to change is also that flexibility. I mean, our own, that, it's okay to change companies and jobs, professions, career throughout our lifetime. But on the other side, the whole recruitment, companies, how they're hiring needs to match that. And I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of when you then out in the job search or the job market and looking to change yourself. That's very true. The plug and play is really what most organizations are looking for, and at the same time, plug, play, and tell me what your potential is as well. So it's also hiring for, yes, the current job, but already trying to project into the future, although that future is super difficult to predict, even for organizations nowadays. And I completely agree with you, Christina. I kind of think people are readier than organizations, and I've been talking about that previously. It's guys in companies, right? I know we've been there on the other side. So, Christina, you also know, like I do, how complicated sometimes it is to change certain mechanisms. And it's not out of bad intent. Yeah. It is often out of habit and out of being used to, and having already created so many programs and so many processes and so many policies and ways of thinking that worked in the past and that today are really starting to a little bit creak a little bit, or shift, and this ability of transferable skills. What skill? If we talk about that a second, because now you've pivoted, right? You've embraced your new life. You took that time off, right? You reflected on your goals. Something closer to what's important for you now. It's fair to say that you've already made that switch. Right. Absolutely. Okay. So, and I think I learned that, for example, for me, and this is also what my corporate job has taught me, right? That I need to be creative in my job, for example. I need to be able to take decisions. I need to feel and able to change something. So for me, what's very important that I feel that I make a difference, that what I do adds value to someone and to something. So, I mean, all of these things combined. So healthcare for me was a fantastic space because you are helping patients and you're moving together with technology, that space forward. It's been fantastic in that sense. But I also know that I have other passions that are very, very important to me. And one passion is art. And I actually think that pivots into another space because with art, you really can express and challenge also how things are happening in society, in the world. There is so much communication, and it's also an amazing vehicle to drive some of that change. But to get back to your transferable skills, like I said earlier, I mean, I worked a lot in sales and in marketing. Now, if I can market medical products, I can also market artworks or work with artists and sell their artworks. Because when you have the skills of selling, yes, of course, there's always an element to learn, and not every industry works exactly the same way. I mean, healthcare is a lot more regulated in that sense, what you can and cannot do. So when you then move into more of a consumer or call it luxury good industry, now there are other rules, and maybe social media is a lot more prominent. So yeah, you gotta acquire skills, but this is the same like with transferable skills. I mean, the basics are there, but also when you hire, and you and I have been both sitting in that chair, I hire a lot for fit and for attitude and personality, because skills I can teach. I mean, yes, there needs to be a foundation and certain basics, right, that are transferable. But in the end, to top up that last bit, I mean, that you can learn. So that's I think true. That's a whole other topic of what's important in your job, right? And normally it's the people you work with, how the environment is, and the fit with your colleagues. The rest, I've only met fantastic colleagues and employees. Everybody eager to learn and better and develop, right? And I think skills.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, hiring attitude is very important, and mindset, as opposed to only skill set. Of course, the skills are important. It's kind of like your entry ticket to be able to perform something. But I kind of wonder if you had wanted to pivot, because you're pivoting, right? So moved from an established, let's say, situation, organization, into consulting, and at the same time you're moving towards your passion, which is art.
Correct.
Now, which you are kind of you're becoming an entrepreneur of yourself, of your life, and of your skills, of your offerings, and what you have to offer to the world, or what you want to offer to the world. I do wonder, though, if you had simply said, I want to pivot career, and therefore I will be applying, quote unquote, for a job in the art world, you will find very similar patterns of recruitment.
Of course.
Very, very difficult to get in.
Oh, absolutely.
It's an extremely closed environment too.
Yes.
So this is not all, I mean, this is really referred to in general any sector, including the arts, right? And the cultural management is also a very, very, I would say, closed.
You're absolutely right. And I think for me, these topics of transferable skill, or what you're hiring for and so forth, is in general. This is not specific to one industry over the other. And it's how do you say that, a bigger issue when you look at how industry companies, in whatever industry they're in, are incentivized in terms of how they hire. Because anywhere, any company, no difference. The biggest problem for a manager is if you have space on your team, because this needs to be filled, right? So there is time is the essence. Most people are super busy. Maybe the onboarding is not as planned or comprehensive maybe as it should be, and so forth. So naturally you have a tendency to hire as fast as possible with someone who just goes in there and starts running. So it is a cycle that somehow needs to be broken, and that is true in every industry. And you're right. I mean, the art industry is extremely close-knit, absolutely. And so, in a sense, what I'm actually also trying to do is to disrupt and change a little bit how that industry works, because unless you are an extremely well-known artist or a well-known professional art collector, in whichever domain that may be, it's extremely hard to get into. For me, the vision I really have there is to give artists a voice through my work, through my consultancy, but also create a space and a place where artists and people that enjoy art can get together. And is that face-to-face, hopefully after our lockdown? Is it virtually? Yes, maybe. And so there's also innovation and technology that can help with all these different industry to bring people closer together. It's about establishing connections. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm trying to do, to say is, unchained art is,
right.
Whatever you make of it. The artists are free to create their art. The art lovers are free to love what feels good for them. And what I'm trying to do is create a place where you can have that dialogue, where you can have that exchange, where you can get together, whether that is in person, as I said, or virtual. So there's also a lot of collaboration with technology, with people, with a network, and we're trying to build it that way. Am I, in the end, going to disrupt anything in that industry? I don't know, but I'm trying to, let's see, I see a space or a gap where I feel that maybe I can make a difference. And if that's just a difference for a few people, then that's great.
So here we are, we've reached the end of part 1 of this episode. Make sure you tune into part 2 as we continue to listen to the story of Christina, and in particular, what does it take to build a new professional persona? And what are some of the things you need to let go of, and some of the new skills you need to make sure you learn and embrace? Make sure you tune in to the next episode. Until then, take good care.